We've been a little spoiled. I can't project the notes onto the board because I don't have that file on my computer. Definitely should have had it saved. But since I can't get it off the internet, we're just going to kind of do this version of it. We're on page 50 in your workbook. And what we're talking about today is types of characters. This is something that we talked about way back at the beginning with your literary terms. But it's something that I want us to be able to do moving on into the next unit. And I will say that it is confusing. I think a lot of y'all messed up these 4 terms because they're very, very similar. So what we're going to do today is look at what they are, what do they mean, and make sure that we can identify types of characters. So the first one is round. A round character is a well-developed character. They show multiple traits. So essentially, we know a lot about them. In the book Thief, who do you think would be a round character? Somebody said it. Liesl, definitely. We know a lot about her. She is well-rounded. So flat is the opposite of that. If we know a lot about a round character, we don't know a lot about a flat character. A flat character only shows one trait. An example from the book Thief could be Hans Jr. Not Senior. Hans Senior would definitely be a round character. But Hans Jr., all we know about him is that he doesn't get along with his father. He's not well developed. So we've got round characters and then we've got flat characters. This little dark. Now, I want you can make this note however you want. If you have extra room, you can just write it to the side. But what I want us to see is that both of these words refer to what we know about them. It's their personality. I'm fogging up. Can't see y'all. The next set of words does not refer to their personality. It refers to what happens to them. So a dynamic character, the character grows and changes throughout the story. Like Max. That's a good example. By the end of the story, a dynamic character is different than when they started out. So static is the opposite of that. The character remains the same. So these 2 words refer to their personality. Is it a round or a flat character? Dynamic and static refer to what happens to them. Do they grow? Do they change? What would be an example of a character who stays the same throughout the book Thief? And this is not necessarily a bad thing. They are the same type of person that they were from beginning to end.
Rudy.
Could be Rudy, could be Death, could be Hans. All of those are good examples. When we meet Hans, he is the same type of person beginning to end. So Hans is a static character. So when we say, what type of character is this? You're going to give 2 words. You're going to decide, are they round or flat? And then you're going to decide, are they dynamic or static? So you might have a round dynamic character. You might have a round static character. So that's what these boxes on the second half of your paper are for. You've got a list of characters, which I was too lazy to rewrite on this board, so we're just going to all look at our papers. And you're going to take each of those characters, and first you're going to ask, okay, round character or flat character? And then you're going to say, okay, it's a round character. Do they change and grow, or do they stay the same, dynamic or static? Good. We've already said Hans is static. So now we've got to ask, we're looking at the first character on our list. Is Hans a round character, or is he a flat character? He's definitely round. So I'm going to put Hans in this box. Next one is Liesel. What do we think? Round or flat? Round and dynamic. Good. Next character is Max. What do you think?
Round dynamic.
Round dynamic. Good. What about Rosa? This is where it gets a little tricky.
What?
Flat or round?
What? Actually,
Oh, I'm hearing both.
What?
I'm hearing both.
What?
Raise your hand if you think that she is flat. About half of the class. Raise your hand if you think she's round. About the other half of the class. Now, here's the deal. There is evidence for both of your statements. You have to provide the evidence. You have to explain why. So as long as you have a justification for your reasoning, you can put it in that box. On the test, there will be test questions about this on the test, but I will ask you for an example. Like, give me an example of a round dynamic character, and I won't pick any of the tricky ones that we talk about. Like, if it's one in class that we had people on both sides of it, I'm not going to ask you about those. Deal? Sound fair? Okay, so you put Rosa, you decide, is she round or flat? But I think we can all agree, is she dynamic or static?
Dynamic.
She's dynamic. She changes. She starts out this really tough, mean, rude person, and by the end of the story, we know she has a heart, she loves Liesel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write Rosa in the middle. You decide. What side of the line are you going to put her on? What about the next one? Ilsa Herman.
Flat and
Flat dynamic?
No.
Now here's the
At the
thing.
beginning,
It's a tricky question.
Because she was like, all you
No,
thought was she
flat.
was just somebody who didn't do anything.
Here's the tricky question. I want you to write this in your box. You can't have flat dynamic characters. So this helps us with Rosa. Why do you think you can't have a flat dynamic character?
because only shows one trait and then they grow and collect more traits.
Good. Perfect, Warren. Flat characters only show one trait. And if they change, that automatically means they show at least 2 traits. So we've got, this box is actually going to be empty. That was a trick question. See what I did there?
No.
Sorry, Dave.
All I saw.
Because
was
it's a box. It's a box.
All I saw was the
It's not
trickery
gonna
that
be
you put
used.
forth
Why
on
did you
me.
put the box there for
You
not
can
use?
shade it out.
You didn't say that.
Because I don't know how to draw these 3 boxes without the 4th box.
Just get rid
One
of
box,
one
one
box.
box, one box.
A triangle.
Don't think that I hand wrote this worksheet for you.
Yes.
I have terrible news. I did not. Okay, so now that we've got through that, I want you to take the rest of the list, and you can work with a partner, and I want you to place all of these into the appropriate box. Make sure that you have a reasoning for why. So, back to the sheet. Gave you a couple minutes to look at it. Who can give me another round dynamic character? Which that
Yeah,
one?
Matt.
Nicholas, give me one.
Frog? Or however.
Mhm.
Frau.
Ow.
Yeah.
I got it right.
Frau Holzapfel.
Let's go. I
I
actually got one
misspelled
right.
it.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
You can't
round
flat
stack.
I spelled it right. I am.
Eli said,
How are you supposed to be rounding
Ilsa.
if you sit in your house the whole time?
"Oh well."
Maybe because he's round.
Wait,
Hey, you.
I put Ilsa
I put
as
Ilsa as
round
flat.
static.
I'm
Why
right.
is your shape?
Only
You just
zero,
leave
right?
it open the window.
Hmm.
You just
There you
see
go.
nicely.
What?
I think, okay,
I put
Lauren had a
stack.
question. He said that Ilsa, he had her as round static. I think, now remember, I said you have to
Yeah,
have
that's right.
evidence to back it up. She grows and changes throughout the novel because remember, at the beginning, she was so scared and like so sorry for herself, she didn't really do anything. She wouldn't even talk to people. But at the end, in the epilogue that we just read, what does she go and do?
She
starts being
adopted.
nice and stuff.
She starts being nice and she goes and gets Liesel. It's implied that she adopts Liesel, that she takes Liesel in and says, "You have lost your family. I have lost my son. I will take care of you." And so that's a big step. Cody, are you raising your hand or just like
That's
waving?
Hitler's daughter.
Just wait. Okay, now, some of you,
Oh my god.
this is all that I have written down, except death. Now, so, there's a good argument for both. We could say that death changes throughout the story, but because technically it's a flashback, the whole book's a flashback, right?
Sure.
Because he says, "I'm going to tell you the story." You could argue that technically he's already been changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write death on this line, smack dab in the middle, and I'm not going to ask you about death on the test
What about
That's
Rudy?
a
But
big
while
one.
he's
because I'm not
changing,
cruel.
while he's telling the story, he's changing throughout it.
You know,
Yeah, what about-
Like you
what about
say,
Rudy?
I don't-
oh,
you know who
the
the shark is?
That is an excellent argument for dynamic. So
for-
if you want to put him in dynamic, you can. I'm just saying, I see the argument for both.
Like
I
say
think
I'm
Rudy-
20 and
I
I
think
started
he's
off
always
from when I
been
was
his
10 to
life,
15.
And
I
so
changed
he's
throughout that
rounded
time period, even though I've
static.
already changed as a 20, but I'm going back in time and telling the story about it, and I changed throughout the story. So it should be round dynamic.
Then you write it in round dynamic because you have a good argument for it. Now,
What about Rudy?
I don't have as many characters written down for round static, and that's okay. Rudy goes into round static.
Yes. He's always the exact same.
He's always the exact same. I also have Michael in this box.
Yes. No.
Michael?
Yes.
I have a lot of people in flat
Michelle?
static.
There are a lot of people in like flat static. Will, give me one.
The mayor.
The mayor.
I hate the mayor.
And
That's
what?
what I put.
That's the only one I'm good at.
Yeah.
We have Hans Jr.,
I put
Franz Deutscher,
I put Michael in there because
and then
really
Alex, Walter, and Tommy.
Who's Walter?
Walter was Max's friend who helped him. Remember?
Tommy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I would for sure make sure for the test that you know who all these characters are. I'm not saying memorize this box. I'm just saying make sure that you know who they are. Especially like some of these names. If they seem unfamiliar, when we get our study guide, make sure that we know who these people are. So, what is the difference between round dynamic characters and flat static characters in terms of the story? Which box covers our main characters?
Round and dynamic.
Round dynamic. This box features most of our main characters, and that makes sense because if Liesel is the star of this story, she's going to have the most growth. We're going to know the most about her. It also makes sense that these characters are minor characters. They appear in the background.
They just
Some of them have one important job, and then that's it. So all of that makes sense. Now, your second page, I want you to look at the second half first. It says stock characters. A stock character is a stereotypical fictional character in a work that audiences recognize from frequent recurrences in a particular literary tradition. Their type appears in multiple works, and they usually only have one or two identifying traits. Stock characters are always flat. Example, the girl next door. Some archetypes can also be considered stock characters. So we talked about archetypes. Stock characters are used like to cast a story. They're used as background characters. And so I want you to think, in The Book Thief, can you identify one character who could be considered a stock character? I'll give you an example of a stock character. A stock character would be a bully. Lots of stories have bullies.
That one dude.
That one dude. Do we have a bully in this Book Thief story?
Yeah, that's the school.
Yes. What was his name?
Hitler.
No.
He's
Although Hitler definitely is the bully. But he's not the one at school.
Franz
Whatever his name.
Franz Deutscher
Weischer.
and also Ludwig Schmeichel. Ludwig. Those were bullies. So that's an example of a stock character. Now, look at the top. It says writing about character types. Choose one of the characters from the previous list. Identify the type, and then write a few sentences, 3 to 5, explaining why the character is this type. So you're going to identify your character. You're going to pick one from this list. And then you're going to tell me what type. Your type should have 2 identifiers. You're going to say, if the character is round or dynamic, round or static, round or flat. I'm very tired. You're going to say if your character is round or flat. And then you're going to say if your character is dynamic or static. And then in this box, I want you to write 3 to 5 sentences explaining why. You might say, Frau Holzapfel is round dynamic because, and then you've got to tell me why. You've got to use evidence. You've got to prove, for whatever you pick, you've got to prove why they're static or why they're dynamic and why they're round or why they're flat. And I'm going to check this. Online students, you will submit this page. And if you have a question,
Goodbye, online. Watch the video.
thank you, Kevin.
They heard me?
I don't know if they did or not. Do you want to come say goodbye to them? I don't know. I got
Go watch the video.
This is us.
You're trash.
Just kidding.
Bye.
This video